Hello, I'm Gerardo Ayala.
Hello, this is John.
Today we're going to talk a little bit about our e-portfolio and the takeaways of the quarter. So John, walk us through your homepage. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, of course. As I'm looking through my homepage right now, there's definitely a lot of personalization in this because I put a lot of pictures that consist of my hobbies. For example, going to the gym and just videos of that, and pictures of me and my family. And I would say it's pretty important because it's good to know about the author that actually made the e-portfolio. So, Gerardo, can you tell me a little bit about your homepage?
I would love to. So, the homepage, I like you, I made it kind of personal. I decided to add pictures and talk about myself. And I did this to kind of use that rhetorical appeal of both ethos and pathos, kind of, touching on that emotion, showing them, I'm human too. I'm another person just like you, but also kind of showing them that credibility where I brought up my AP classes and kind of like my journey through English to kind of show them that I do know a little bit about writing. I'm a writer. I've written essays before, and kind of just making that connection, that human connection with the audience and whoever's scrolling through my website.
So in terms of like rhetorical appeal in my website, for example, my literacy narrative, I definitely put some rhetorical appeal in there in terms of credibility, so ethos, because in the page, like on the start of my page, I put all the texts that we had and just like showing what I knew about the text, just like a rough summary of it to show that I actually read the book and annotated it and know what it's about.
I actually did something similar on mine too, but I had more of like structure-wise, I wanted to have more tabs, kind of just to clean up the page a little, not make it so cluttered, kind of showing the audience that I was thinking of them. I wanted to make sure that they weren't scrolling through a bunch of stuff, that they could find it in an easier way. So yeah, I totally agree with it.
In terms of the way that I displayed the certain like process that I went through writing. So for example, my literacy narrative, I just did a first draft, second draft, and third draft. And I would like talk about how each process was. For example, my first draft of the literacy narrative, I would talk about how it was pretty hard because Professor Medina brought up this whole concept of like no 5-paragraph essays, which was like a pretty new concept to me because I've been writing a 5-paragraph essay my whole life, and that was like pretty new to me. But after that, we had that one-on-one meeting with him. For example, my second draft, which I had a lot of improvements because he taught me that whole concept of structure, where he was showing me where there needs to be a balance of like evidence and like analysis, and that really helped me out in terms of my writing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, for me, the struggle was a little different. It was more on the personal side of things. Because that first essay, the literacy narrative essay, it was kind of bringing in that personal experience. And I had never done that before in my previous AP English classes. I just always wrote something more academic. So I really struggled personally with that. And after, again, speaking with Professor Medina, I was able to kind of get out of that comfort zone and take the risk, really, to kind of, show more of who I am and my own personal experiences. I also kind of established that credibility by showing my reflection, showing, I struggled with this, like I said, struggling with the personal introduction. And then later on in the rhetorical analysis, I learned that the way I implemented quotations, although it may have worked back in my previous classes, now it was kind of, I needed to build upon it, to adapt and use those phrases.
I had a lot of similarities in terms of like the struggle that I had with like evidence and analysis, because I was doing a lot of evidence but then not elaborating off of that. I was doing a lot of comparing for some reason, like in terms of like the lens analysis, right?
What do you mean?
Like the lens analysis, we would take one text and then use that text to explain the other text, but I was just kind of like finding similarities and differences between those two situations instead of actually like using one to like explain the other one. And that was a big struggle that I had.
Okay.
Yeah.
And kind of what went into that, like how you battled with that and kind of try to overcome it in a way?
Yeah. I overcame it by just like taking it step by step, just like simplifying it in terms of like trying to like just take both pieces and combine it together. I just took one piece of like the main umbrella type of thing, and then I used the other piece as like a branch to explain why that certain situation happened.
What appeal approach would you say you kind of took when going into describing that reflection in your e-portfolio?
Yeah, I would definitely say that I use pathos because I explained like those struggles I had, and then I feel like writers nowadays, if they looked at my e-portfolio, they could relate to the struggles I may have had writing like certain new college essays that we had this year. With my discussion posts, I would say that most of the discussion posts that we had definitely related back to the themes that we had in this class. For example, education and identity, right? And I would say most of the writing that we had, it related a lot back to first generation, which is like, the whole theme of being in lead. And I would say that relates back to ethos as well because we are first generation students.
Again, yeah, taking that relatability. So why did you include your discussion posts in your portfolio? I'm just curious.
I would say I included the discussion post to show like the improvement of writing that I had throughout this quarter because I would say through every single discussion post I definitely made an improvement in terms of using the certain quotes that relate back to the prompt that was asked, and I'd say I used it a lot better and elaborated a lot better.
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, I also included a discussion post tab. I did it in a way that was kind of showing the progression of ideas from the first one we had all the way to the last one, to kind of just show the audience, again, how we grew, how we took the lessons we learned and put it into that discussion posts. And I don't know, what were your thoughts on the discussion post? Because for me, I kind of enjoyed it. I thought it was a great way to kind of build up that progression of ideas, especially based off of the kind of questions we were asked. But also it was a great way to kind of get different perspectives and see, like what you were writing, what other classmates were writing, and just get in that different frame of mind,
Yeah. Now, it was great because it was so much more simpler than the big assignments that we had. It was like more broken down because it was just one or two questions, and then it would just be our perspective on it. It was like a cool refresher for us. But in terms of like the discussion post, it also gave me a sense of realization in terms of like the projects that we had, because if you compare the literacy narrative compared to like the lens analysis, I would say that it's a lot more complex, because like the literacy narrative is like a lot simpler than the lens analysis, I would say. Like, don't you think so?
Absolutely. But I mean, personally, like I touched on earlier, for me, that one was kind of one of the tougher ones to write just because it was completely foreign to me, writing about your own personal experiences. But no, definitely the lens essay was pretty challenging.
Yeah. I do want to talk about like a certain tip that Professor Medina gave me. Like a really good tip that he gave me was like reaching out to other audiences. And I would say in terms of like the rhetorical analysis, that's where it was like shown the most, because we would have to talk about how it would relate to one audience, but also an even more broad audience, like for one side of the spectrum and even the other side of the spectrum too. And I think it was pretty cool because it also increased like the word count too. So it's pretty nice.
Yeah, no, I remember we were in class and you talked about that. That was a pretty good tip. I think I incorporated that into my essay too, so I appreciate it. So, John, as we wrap up this podcast, I'm curious, what are your takeaways from the quarter?
Yeah, I would say that having an outline is really important because, sure, you can go in without any like idea and just like start off with like certain ideas that you have in your head right now. But I say having a rough outline is really important.
I agree. And then kind of touching on a different thing, I would say communication with your peers, with your professor, going to office hours, and those individual conferences for me were very helpful to kind of just see what is it that Professor Medina is really looking for, but also kind of like talking with you in class, kind of looking over each other's essay. You want to close this out, John?
Yeah, I'll close it out. Thank you for listening to our podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed our beautiful faces as well. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one. Enjoy our websites and make sure you subscribe.